That was not a game, Dan, that was about the front office.
Right.
That was not a game that was about whatever it was this Cowboys team is missing. I'm not suggesting it is perfect, but it was more than equipped to go out and win that game against the Green Bay Packers, a defense that allowed 30 points to Carolina 3 weeks ago. That was a game in which the coaching was the problem. They got circles coached around them in that game, and that is why, to me, I am genuinely surprised that this is the decision they arrived at.
I am as well, completely outcoached. And it wasn't like this game was a 3-point loss, game-winning field goal. Different conversation. They were outplayed from the very first drive of the football game in schematics and the way the game went. I'm surprised by the decision. We'll see in a year if that's the case. I have two things. Jerry Jones, please do not tell us that you'll do anything to go win a Super Bowl, that it's the most important thing. No, it's not. Comfort is the most important thing. Two, with this decision, this better be the most aggressive offseason in the history of the Dallas Cowboys. This better be the all-in year. This better be, hey, Les Snead for the Los Angeles Rams, the general manager. What did you do to go rebuild your football team? Did you screw all the picks, and how did you go about it? The New Orleans Saints, who consistently pushed the cap forward. You better go figure out how they did, because you got holes on your football team. You're not close to winning a Super Bowl. Versus the really good teams, you got your doors blown off. Don't talk to me about the Lions when you were gifted that win. Don't talk to me about the close loss to Miami. They were decimated by injuries. San Francisco blew you out. The Green Bay Packers blew you out. So don't sit here and tell us that there's nothing more important to you than a Super Bowl. Comfort is the most important thing to you. That's why you stayed as is.
Before we came in here, Kmart, I was watching you over there on Unsportsmanlike on ESPN Radio, and I heard what you were talking about, and I agreed with you completely. This is a unique year because not only was this team outcoached, but there is a person out there. It's one thing to say that Jerry Jones doesn't want to start over again at the age of 81, right? Most coaching changes would constitute starting over. Hiring Bill Belichick would not constitute starting over. It would mean bringing in an elite game coach, an elite strategist to take basically the roster you have, a little tweak here, a little tweak there, and try and win the Super Bowl everyone thinks they're good enough to do. I am flabbergasted that he didn't do everything in his power to talk Bill into it.
So when Chef D broke the news yesterday, I was immediately shocked. But then when I took a second to reflect, I said, you know what, this actually is in line with how Jerry Jones operates. He's not somebody who makes emotional decisions and rash decisions, especially when it comes to his head coaches. If the question is this a mistake? I think this is only a mistake to keep Mike McCarthy if Jerry Jones felt like, at this stage, I don't want to go through another regime change because like that kind of turnover, I just don't want to deal with that. If that is the sole reason, then it's a mistake to keep Mike McCarthy, because the most unfulfilled, unhappy people that I know are the ones who are scared of the unknown, who are scared to break free of relationships or marriages or partnerships because they're like, you know what, it's great, but I don't know what's out there, and I'm just comfortable here. Now, if Jerry Jones firmly believes that Mike McCarthy has all the answers, he can fix the clock management, which we've been talking about since he came to Dallas. If he can fix the defense, if he thinks that Mike McCarthy can figure it all out, and he firmly believes that, God bless him, I hope he's right. But here's the problem. I don't think this team is far away from winning a Super Bowl. I don't. I understand the QB. I understand the money that's involved. There's talent here. They draft well. It's a stable organization. But it's an organization that is wonderful at being successful in the regular season, and they haven't gotten over the hump. So something has to change. So if you're not changing the quarterback, you're not changing the head coach, then Jerry's approach in the offseason, to your point earlier about how aggressive he needs to be, something has to be different.
Well, it's not surprising to me, but I don't like the decision. And it's because, number one, the candidates that you have out there in the coaching ranks. When you look at a Bill Belichick who's available, you look at a Mike Vrabel who's available, and also a Jim Harbaugh. We're talking about three guys that can coach at an extreme level and had success previously at the stops that they were, right? And when I look at Jerry Jones, I think this move tells me comfortability. And I was always taught that, you know, when you're comfortable with something, you get complacent with things as well. And you're okay with just mediocrity. I think comfortability drives complacency, in my opinion. And I think that's what we're seeing right here with Jerry Jones. I understand Mike McCarthy, and we're not saying that he's a bad coach. We know Mike McCarthy can coach football at a high level, but it's not about regular season wins. It's about winning the Super Bowl. It's about having an NFC championship appearance at least, and having an opportunity to contend for a championship ring.
There are people who feel differently. Mike Tannenbaum is another. He tweeted, "This is the right decision. It's incredibly hard to win 36 regular season games in 3 seasons. With that said, he needs to significantly improve upon his clock management, but his overall body of work is deserving of another year." I can also verify that Dan Orlovsky and Mike Tannenbaum are going back and forth on text, because somehow I got involved in this. For some reason, I'm on this chat.
He's out of his mind.
It's going back and forth like crazy, people.
Okay, so is it hard to win 36 games over the course of 3 years in the NFL when you have, one, a quarterback who plays consistent top 10 football for the most part, number 2, 3 all-pros on the offensive line, number 3, a young upcoming star at tight end in Ferguson, an offensive player of the year candidate in CeeDee Lamb, you have a defense that leads the NFL in takeaways, a defense that is a defensive player of the year candidate in Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence is an absolute star, Trayvon Diggs is one of the best ball hawks in the defensive secondary, and Deron Bland broke an NFL record for pick sixes. Is it that hard to win 36 games over the course of 3 years when you have all of that talent? The question at the heart of this issue is, what coaches overachieved and what coaches underachieved? Unequivocally, Dallas underachieved this year, last year, and the year before. Guess who overachieved? Detroit and Dan Campbell. Green Bay and Matt LaFleur. Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota. Matt Eberflus in Chicago, if we're being dead honest about the situation. Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay. Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. We'll see what happens this weekend. And then Sean McVay in the Los Angeles Rams. Guess who underachieved? Arthur Smith in the Atlanta Falcons.
Massively, yeah.
What happened there?
Fired.
So don't talk to me about 36 wins. We've given you this roster. I saw Marcus tweet this. Now, dude, the roster's pretty stinking good. Did you overachieve or underachieve? No one's going to tell us that they overachieved.
Let's not. You're entitled to your opinion. What I'll say, let's not sell short the 12 wins. He did a good job in the regular season. But the point is, at some point,
Washington
the time. But at some point, the time comes to take another step, and he's proved incapable of doing it. And look, it's not just this. We talk about Jerry Jones and his unwillingness to make a change. We all know that he hasn't been in the NFC Championship game since 1997, right? In that time, the Cowboys have won 5 playoff games. Since 1997, the Cardinals have won 6. The Jets have won 7. The Falcons have won 8. The Jaguars have won 8. The Panthers have won 9. All of those teams have won more playoff games than the Dallas Cowboys have since essentially Jimmy Johnson left, for all intents and purposes. That's the truth.
26 other teams have made a conference championship since the last time that the Cowboys were there. 26 teams have made a conference championship since the last time the Dallas Cowboys.
And the Houston Texans didn't even exist the last time the Dallas Cowboys made the championship.
But I will push back on one thing Harry said. I think Belichick is in a class by himself. Like, I think Jerry Jones should have investigated whether Belichick would have been interested. I think that is a failing there. I don't put Vrabel and I don't put Jim Harbaugh on the same level as Bill Belichick, personally. So I think if you're Jerry Jones, to me it's like Belichick is a clear Super Bowl champion. Like, I know this man knows how to build a championship roster and a championship team. But if Belichick, some back channel says, I'm not going to Dallas, I understand why you keep Mike McCarthy, because it's like, you know what? I am guaranteed that we're going to win 13 games. I don't know if Jerry Jones at this point, I don't know what other coach you bring in here that guarantees you the Super Bowl is the same way that you look at Belichick.
I'll push back because I watched Mike Vrabel go to an AFC Championship game and beat the #1 seed, beat Belichick in New England before he lost to Kansas City in Kansas City.
When they were up, too. Yeah.
So I will push back on that. And when you talk about Jim Harbaugh, we're talking about a guy that took a Michigan football team in which they needed to get back to national prominence. He was able to do that, beating Ohio State 3 years in a row, making the college football playoffs 3 years in a row, but then getting Coach of the Year his first year in the National Football League, going to conference championship after conference championship before losing in the Super Bowl to his brother.
Right.
Listen, the decision is made. This is what they have to do. Number one, defensively, they have to build a defense that isn't strictly predicated on takeaways. They have to rebuild the spine. You got to get bigger at defensive tackle, and you got to get inside linebackers, and you have to be able to play a suffocating style of football, not dependent on if we get takeaways or don't. If they get takeaways, they win. If they don't get takeaways, they lose. Number two, offensively, they have to build their scheme around multiple ways to win when your right hook is taken away.
I agree.
You've got to be able to be versatile enough scheme-wise that when a defense challenges, those are the two primary things outside of the personnel that has to happen.
Now, look, I mean, I will just finish this part of the conversation by asking you the question. Did the Cowboys look ready in any way to play that game on Sunday? Absolutely not. No. When a team comes out ready, and we credit the coach. We always, that's great coaching. Yep. When they're not ready at all to play a game they absolutely
on either side of the
have
football.
Won. On either side of the football, and Mike McCarthy is going to keep his job, and Dan Quinn's going to go get one. Just speaking only for myself, it pains me to have to say the things that have to be said about Dak Prescott if you're going to give a fair assessment, because there's so much about him to love. He does all the off-the-field things exactly right. He is the stand-uppest of stand-up guys. He clearly is a leader and the adult in the room on a franchise that sometimes desperately needs one. However, the reality is, the narrative on him, the accurate narrative on Dak Prescott is he's been a very good player in the regular season, and he has come up small in the biggest games. And the only way that changes is if he changes it. I hope he does, Dan, but at this moment, that's the only reasonable assessment.
Yeah, the word to associate with Dak Prescott right now after this weekend is but. Really good player, but. Really good MVP season, but. When you had to play the Packers, who this year in defense were bad, you were really bad. You're a really good player, but you can't win that big game in the playoffs when you're going against a really good team or a really good defense. I've said this before, Greeny. There's two different levels to quarterback play when we're talking about like starters, the top 12 or 15 or 18 in the NFL. Number one, when our team is beat up, when our team is depleted, can you carry us for some moments? Lamar Jackson has done that. Patrick Mahomes has done that. Josh Allen is doing that, and Joe Burrow has done that. The second thing is when we're whole, when we're pretty darn healthy, can we go win a championship with you? Patrick Mahomes has done that. Joe Burrow has certainly gotten to that point. Lamar Jackson has the best opportunity that he's ever had to do that, as is Josh Allen. Dak Prescott has not done that yet. This team was whole this past year. They fell short again, in part because he played very poorly. This team was whole last year. They fell short, in part because his poor play. And that's where Dallas is in. This state of purgatory, knowing we got a good player, but our good player never, in a moment where we need him to take the other good and make us great and champions, it hasn't happened. And until it does, for unfortunate reasons, like that's going to be attached to his name.
There's good Dak and there's bad Dak. Like at this point, it is what it is. Like when you talk about him, the numbers are the numbers. He's 2-5 in the postseason. Yep. The regular season stats are impressive. He did have, Mike McCarthy, I imagine, sat in that meeting and said, I took over play calling, and look how Dak played.
Best season of his career.
Best season. Imagine what we can do when he and I run it back. Because that's honestly the only thing I think Mike McCarthy can say besides how many games they won in the regular season. But with Dak, you can't overlook the postseason stuff. But if you are Jerry Jones, obviously those numbers the postseason numbers don't matter as much because he still has faith that Dak can win them a Super Bowl. I would hope, because why else would you keep this kid?
They're about to pay him an insane, I should not have said it that way. They're about to pay him an enormous amount of money. Yeah. That is the going rate for the top-level quarterbacks. Yes. Now, there was a moment in time that I remember when we used to throw around the word elite all the time. That was the big question. Who are the elite quarterbacks in the league? I would wonder if I would have put down a list. I've just been writing down names.
Use win because of or win with.
I said something earlier this morning, and Dan just sort of shot me a look. So here are the names. I believe there is one level of players who are just, of the quarterbacks who are just atop everybody else. And they are Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Put the three below Mahomes in whatever order you choose, but those are the guys. Mm-hmm. Now I'm just going to throw names at you. Would you rather have this player than Dak Prescott as your quarterback? Justin Herbert. C.J. Stroud.
Oh, Stroud.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen.
It depends on who the play caller is.
Jordan.
I think I would say Dak Prescott right now.
Jordan Love.
Love.
Yep.
Trevor Lawrence.
I'll go Dak.
Yeah.
Tua Tagovailoa.
I'll go Dak.
Brock Purdy.
I'll go Purdy.
And so, I mean, that's my point. Is so now what level are we actually talking about here? You got these young guns who are coming up all of a sudden.
And then
You
when
got
the
C.J.
top-
Stroud,
But to your point,
Jordan
though,
Love.
Benny, the thing that I can't get out of my mind is the last 2 years, including this year, you had a first-year starting quarterback in Jordan Love that played and outperformed Dak Prescott. Last year, you had a first-year player in Brock Purdy who made the plays when he needed to make the plays in the ball game, and Dak
look at
Prescott
C.J.
did it.
Stroud against one of the best defenses in the NFL last
With
week
a
in
rookie
his
head
first
coach.
playoff
Yep.
game.
Stroud's a different animal compared to Dak.
Well, but this is what I'm. So my point is that all these guys now are guys that you're saying that you're going to attack yourself to.
But this is where it goes. I remember vividly sitting with you at the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay and this whole conversation. What do you do now if you're Dallas?
Right.
They've kind of like strung this whole situation on and forward. And again, 9.5 out of the 10 things that you want out of your quarterback, Dak glows about. Like he's the walking face of it. But they sit in this situation. That's why I said next year, this is what's going to happen. Next year, they're going to win 11, 12 games. They're going to be really good in the regular season. And you're going to ask us on this show, is this the Cowboys' best chance? And we're going to go, sure. You know, just like it has been the last 3 or 4 years. And then they're going to play in the playoffs. And we're going to break down all this football. And it's going to come down to, can he play his best game of the season? And it just hasn't happened.
And Dio, I don't know what it is, because when I look at some of those plays versus the Green Bay Packers, like, why wouldn't you throw that ball to CeeDee Lamb on the corner route?
How about that one?
Instead of
This
Brandon
pick six
Cooks?
here is a
Well, that's what I'm saying. You
ridiculous
have the safety coming down to take that away.
That pick is the same pick he threw in the playoff game against San Francisco last year. It's the same play. It's the same coverage. It's the same pick. Just San Francisco didn't bring it back to the house.
I was reviewing this film last night. Green Bay ran this coverage before that pick happened.
Yeah,
They ran that play, that same coverage before that play happened.
Marcus said it really well yesterday. When Marcus is, if we're being honest, has greased the Cowboys for the last 2 years, dead on. He said, for some reason, it's like when the lights get bright, it becomes too big for him. And I don't know why. At least in the postseason it is.
History is filled with players like that. That's the truth.
That are really good in the regular season?
Yes, tons of them in all sports. The way that players become the elite, the way that players become legends is by elevating in the biggest moments. There are tons of players in sports history who have been great regular season players and then not taken that next step. Let's look, he's got half a career still in front of him. Hopefully he's able to change that narrative, but to this point he has not. Do you believe that Jerry Jones got this decision right?
No, it's ridiculous. I don't know how you can continue to ignore the lack of postseason success, especially when there's a coach that's a clear and obvious upgrade from Mike McCarthy and Bill Belichick. And I'm not saying that McCarthy isn't very good, but based on the two resumes, I have more confidence that there is a head coach that can get to and win the big game without Hall of Fame quarterback play over the other one. And that will be the difference between where Belichick is versus where I view Mike McCarthy as a head coach.
That's fair. And if it's just Belichick, I heard Kmart was on your show on Sportsmanlike on ESPN Radio before we came in here this morning, and I was watching that segment, and she said, if not Belichick, then I understand the decision. So let me phrase it that way. Shefty said that there's no information that says that Jerry Jones reached out. Let's live in a world where Jerry Jones couldn't get Bill Belichick.
Okay.
Would that change your opinion on this being the right decision?
Well, if it's a guy that's going to be my second choice, then I don't know if I have any conviction that that guy is going to break through the glass ceiling that has been the second round of the playoffs each of the last 3 years, right? You got bounced twice in the wild card round at home, and the one against Green Bay is the most egregious one because you're talking about the youngest playoff roster since 1974. But to Kmart's question, if it's not Bill Belichick, there's still a coach that I would view as an upgrade from Mike McCarthy right now, and that's Jim Harbaugh. Like, he's out there in the ether. He's interviewing for NFL jobs. He just completed interviews with the Chargers and with the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, if Bill Belichick, if you can't get him for whatever reason, why wouldn't you go down the path of exploring Jim Harbaugh? I think either one of them looked like an upgrade this hiring cycle. And for Jerry Jones to value continuity over a coach that we believe is a potential upgrade to me is just, I guess it's hubris and it's ego. And I feel like that is ultimately going to undermine his chances at being able to get one more Lombardi.
I think there's value in continuity. I do. I think we make it a much bigger, or give it a much greater value than in actuality it has. Houston completely blew everything up. they're playing this weekend. The Rams have completely overturned things because of coaches getting plucked, and they just have a really good coach and a really good quarterback. The whole thing of, well, continuity is going to be the driving force of our success, I don't necessarily buy into as the number one thing. I think, like, are you really good at coaching, and are you really good at the quarterback spot? If you have those two things in a supplementary roster, then you got a chance. I think the whole, like, Jerry Jones, believes that, like, keeping Mike McCarthy at the forefront and that's going to be the difference maker. I just don't think we have a lot of evidence to support that.
Well, not only that, I mean, if you're looking at the 4 coaches who've been in their jobs for a really long time, the 4 places where you've had significant continuity in the NFL, it's been Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll, and Andy Reid. Of those, only Reid has been in the Super Bowl in recent years. Bill was there before they lost Brady. So, okay,